Okay, well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here and coming to this meeting. This topic kind of came about quite spontaneously. I believe it was the last presentation that I did, and I mentioned something about Venus and Mars and how they're next year in 2018, they're both going to be in retrograde, and I very loosely said, well, maybe I'll just do another presentation on that. And then Linda contacted me asking me if I wanted to do a presentation on that. And I said, well, of course. I personally feel very connected to Venus, and I was born on a Venus day, Friday. And I love anything to do with feminine, masculine, and I believe that Venus and Mars both represent that for us in our own individual charts and then collectively. And as we know, with astrology and the way life is, there's nothing is a coincidence, and it's not often that we have both Mars and Venus going retrograde at the same year. We have Venus and then Mars, and then Venus and then Mars. Mars goes retrograde only once every 2 years. So it's very interesting and auspicious that they're both going to be in retrograde in 2018. And to add to that, 2018 is quite loaded with a lot of transitions, and Chiron moving into a new sign, and Uranus moving into a new sign. Saturn is moving into a new sign at the end of this year. The nodes are going to be shifting at the end of 2018. It's full. Let's just say that it is full on. And one of the things that I love about these presentations, that it allows me to investigate, and I have to just do a little bit of research before presenting this and see, well, what's actually going on. And as I was looking into the charts and different dates, and just the orchestration that is occurring within the retrograde cycles of both Venus and Mars. So I'll be talking about that today, and seeing what's occurring throughout the year, not just in the retrograde cycle, but what really is happening throughout the year with both Venus and Mars and other planets that are associated with Venus and Mars through sign or mutual reception, whatnot, what's happening with the nodes as well, since Mars is going to be retrograde in Aquarius, where the South Node is right now, and definitely going to talk about that. So I'm going to start sharing my screen and go into presentation mode. So yeah, of course, if you have any questions, once I go into the presentation mode on my screen, I won't be able to see other things on the screen. So I know Linda can inform me, or Wanda, if you need me to stop, or if there's any questions, and I'm going to leave room for some questions at the end. But if there's anything super burning, then please let us know. Okay. So, Linda, just let me know if can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, great. So Venus and Mars in 2018, a retrograde year for the cosmic lovers, which I'm going to offer my perspective also when it comes to collectively, what does this all mean? What's the reason? What is God pointing us towards? What's the message with this retrograde cycles for both Venus and Mars in the same year, where the nodes are shifting as well? So in my perspective, looking at initiating big changes when it comes to our feminine and masculine, and that's there's few aspects to that. One of the aspects is, of course, internally for each and every one of us, and each chart, each individual soul is going to experience these retrogrades in a very different way. And what is the individual lesson that will be learned and implemented through the retrograde cycles of both of these planets? And then also collectively, and feminine and masculine is not so much related to gender, since we have both feminine and masculine regardless of gender. However, I am going to touch a little bit about I'm going to touch on gender when it comes to men and women, as we see men associated with Mars, Venus with Venus, because I see that as something very significant as we move forward into this great awakening and evolution that we are experiencing in the collective consciousness and the collective unconsciousness. There's something to be said about how we relate to one another as what appears to be opposite sexes, and how much we are called to cultivate more compassion and patience with one another and release a lot of old wounds and hurt and mistrust and old karma, so we can actually establish a new foundation for humanity and how we work together, men and women. So these are just the dates and the signs which we are going to be focusing on in those retrogrades. Mars is going to go retrograde, first of all, June 26th till August 27th. From Aquarius all the way back into Capricorn. The shadow period begins as early as May 12th, and for 5 months it's going to be in shadow. And shadow just means that Mars is going to enter the zone in May 12th. It's going to enter the zone which he will cover during the retrograde period. And it's very interesting, and again, not a coincidence, that both Mars and Venus are going to shift signs in the retrograde. That doesn't happen all the time, that a planet goes retrograde and moves back into the previous sign, and there's something with that as well. It's always, the way I see it is, there's something that still needs to be covered on a deeper level with that energy of that sign. So when it comes to Mars going back to Capricorn, which is quite interesting, if you look at the degrees of Capricorn, 28 degrees of Capricorn, that's where it's going to go direct after its retrograde. It's exactly where we having Mercury conjuncting Saturn right now, and where Mercury is going retrograde, 29 degrees, but nevertheless, the last degrees of Capricorn. And this Mercury retrograde cycle that is going to start in a few days is very significant. And the last one for 2017, right around the full moon. So that's for Mars. And then Venus, the dates are right here, October 5th through November 16th, from Scorpio all the way into Libra, which is her home sign, in shadow for only 2 months, September 2nd until December 17th. Now, one of the interesting things that I saw here is both Mars and Venus are actually going from a fixed sign to a cardinal sign. Again, not a coincidence. Nothing is a coincidence. And so I see that as initiating change, 100%, initiating big changes when it comes to our masculine, feminine within ourselves, how those two energies come together and interact in a new way. And with the whole Capricorn thing, definitely looking at structures that are up for big changes. Absolutely big changes, something that is very much fixed and established, going into a cardinal sign, initiating change, and going back to that cardinal, redoing, rethinking, and reevaluating those changes and what really needs to be initiated. Another thing to pay attention to is that Venus is going retrograde in the signs that are more connected to our relationships, both Scorpio and Libra, about the other person. With Scorpio, we're looking at power, and with Libra, we're looking at balance, justice, harmony. Interesting that Scorpio is ruled by Mars, Libra is ruled by Venus, and Venus is going to cover that territory. So Venus is definitely going to help us understand more about our interpersonal relational dynamics and the changes that need to be initiated really invoking the questions of what kind of relationships I'm looking to form and create. That's on a personal level. And what is out of balance? How do we create more harmony in our relationships? How do we create more harmony between men and women? And of course, that is connected. Everything that we do on our personal level and within our personal relationships spills over into our global network and into our social interactions and into a human race as a global family. And that's exactly the territory that Mars is covering, or at least the signs that Mars is going to cover in his retrograde motion. Aquarius, which has everything to do with the global family, with humanity, international connections. And then Capricorn is our structures and our social structures. And there's a very deep connection and a very important connection between how we handle ourselves, how we handle our relationships, and then how do we show up in the world. Those two are connected. The way we do what I believe, the way we do anything is the way we do everything. And so those two very different energies, Venus and Mars, are going to cover different territories, but I like to see how we can blend those two together to initiate change. And with Mars being in Aquarius for a while, because it's going to move in retrograde, and again, the South Node is there, Aquarius is inviting us to innovate and to think about new ways to take action, to think about new ways to initiate change. Again, we're looking at initiating change. Mars, being ruled by Aries, likes to initiate and to take action. However, it's the question of how do we do that? How do we go about it? Now, it's also what I'm paying attention to is Mars is covering the territory of Aquarius and Capricorn in his retrograde cycle. Both Aquarius, the modern ruler of Aquarius is Uranus, as we know. However, in old astrology, Aquarius was ruled by Saturn. So we're looking at both Aquarius and Capricorn. Both are ruled by Saturn. And so Mars is going to cover that territory while Saturn is in Capricorn. There's so much of Capricorn energy, which Mars is exalted in Capricorn also. And it is the power to build and create new structures and new structures for society that will continue to support us in the years to come. And it's up to us what kind of new structures we are going to build and create. So there will be a lot of attention on Saturn, especially Saturn being in his home sign for 2.5 years, to bring into form, to really create, and most importantly is to create with integrity. So Mars covering that territory, both ruled by Saturn, is action aligned with integrity. And that's the only way, and that's the lesson of Venus, that's the only way that we can really bring about harmony, peace, balance, and justice if we learn how to walk the talk, so to speak, and live with integrity and spiritual integrity, which we can practice in our own personal life, in our own personal relationships, and then we'll see more of that in the world. For sure. And also paying attention to Uranus, and I'll show that in the charts and what Uranus is doing, because Uranus is going to switch signs as well in 2018. So definitely the future. I see Uranus as the energy that rules ascension and the heavens and a new future and something that we haven't seen before. The age of Aquarius, so to speak. Maybe we are not going to experience it in our lifetime fully and completely, but we are definitely paving the way for that, for the generations to come. All right, so I'm going to start with this slide first of all. Way before Mars goes retrograde or Venus goes retrograde, I'm going to talk about Mars first of all, because he's going retrograde first. So even though it's usually ladies first, but I'm actually doing Mars first. But what I wanted to show here is April 17th of 2018 is when Chiron actually moving from Pisces to Aries. Okay. And anytime Chiron moves into a new sign, or any planet, really, especially planets that don't change signs very frequently, is important. And there's a shift in consciousness, there's a shift in energies that we can feel in our own lives and collectively. However, within the context of this presentation, this takes on a more of an emphasis because Chiron is moving into the sign that rules Mars. Chiron moves into Aries. Chiron spent, I think it's 7 years that it spent in Pisces. And we've been experiencing a very deep spiritual healing, to some degree, learning how to connect again to our faith, to our spirituality, to our spiritual nature. Wounds that are a little bit more hidden, anything to do with Pisces, unconscious. And now moving into Aries, there's a level of healing the individuality of the soul, and healing our own human nature, really our instinctive nature. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac, is instincts, is taking action, and healing our animal part of our human nature. If Pisces was focusing on the divine / spiritual aspect of the human experience, or our own human vehicle, then Chiron goes into Aries to really address the animalistic side of our human nature, which we all have, well, part animal, part spirit, and blending the two together. It's not either or, it's the merge of the two, and to find the balance, right, for a more harmonious existence for ourselves and humanity at large. So I just wanted to show that, just that day, that Chiron is going to move into Aries, and Chiron will go back into Pisces, and we'll see that in some of the different charts. But this is the day that Chiron chooses to move into Aries, which is very, very interesting to see that on that same day. Look at what's going on here. The sun conjuncts just 1 degree apart Uranus, still in Aries. Uranus is already direct here at this point, and getting closer to move into Taurus. But we are looking at anything to do with Uranus can be shocking and unpredictable, and at the same time, there's just new ways, a new way to go about life. With the sun, it's our conscious awareness, and so this to me shows a great awakening, and really depends on where a person is on their path. It can be very shocking and scary, or it can be very exhilarating. This is definitely quite a portal to ascend even higher within our consciousness when it comes to the sun here. Yes, and Mars at this point is exalted in Capricorn, very close to Pluto, and conjuncting Black Moon Lilith right here. So we are seeing the revolution starting here within our social structures. Also looking on a personal level, looking at our long-term goals, and what is it that we are so eager to create and to initiate within this time period. Because Mars, before it goes retrograde, and especially when it's exalted, that's a very strong energy for each and every one of us to really take the initiative and move things forward, and take action, and create structures, like I said earlier, that can help us individually, support us on our individual journey, on that journey of ascension, looking at the structures that work, the structures that don't work, and then of course globally, same thing with our social structures, what works, what doesn't work, which we know a lot of what needs to change already. However, it definitely takes some time to move from the knowing and the conceptual understanding of things to actually implementing the change that we want to see in the world. So moving from April 17th, May 15th, what a day here. And again, when I was just looking at the charts, my mind was blown away to see all the configurations happening in the cosmos, and just to know everything is orchestrated so perfectly and divinely. So May 15th, we having a few things happening. If you can see here, the new moon in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. And on that, Uranus over here is right at the last degrees of Aries on that day. And the following day, which I'm going to move May 16th. So right after we had the new moon in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus, which is ruled by Venus, we're moving into May 16th, just a few hours really after the new moon in Taurus, which is so much about Venus, as Venus connected to, associated with Taurus, our bodies, our human bodies, beauty and touch and sensuality and pleasure, the feminine essence that we all have, that we all carry within our body, and in nature. Really, nature is a big teacher for us when it comes to our feminine nature and the constant change that we experience within that structure. And so the following day, May 16th, Mars moves into Aquarius. That's when Mars begins his journey in the sign of Aquarius. And on that same day, Uranus moved into Taurus. So again, not a random thing that within a few hours of a new moon in Taurus, Uranus moves into Taurus. I see that as a clear message from above or from within, right? Pay attention to Taurus. Pay attention to the five senses, not to get lost in the five senses. But with Uranus being in Taurus on a personal level is, I don't like necessarily the word transcending the five senses, but reinventing the way we relate to our five senses. So there's a higher expression and a lower expression to anything. And with Uranus being in Taurus, there's definitely an invitation, especially after Uranus moves through Aries, there's definitely an invitation to reinvent and awaken in a new way how we relate to our bodies. How do we relate to our sensual nature? How do we relate to Venus? Uranus in Taurus, now we'll be looking at Venus throughout the entire process, since Taurus is associated with Venus. So Uranus being in that sign and moving into that signs in that same year of Venus-Mars retrograde at the same time, with everything else happening, is definitely something to pay attention and to free ourselves from something perhaps that kept us limited before. With Uranus in the picture, it gives us the opportunity to liberate ourselves and to free ourselves from whatever it is that keeps us in a certain box or in a certain structure that doesn't really fit the new paradigm or the new vision for our future, since Uranus is definitely the futuristic planet. We cannot continue to do things the same with Uranus in the picture. And that's why when it becomes shocking and unpredictable, it's like this slap in the face that we need to, whoa, okay, and now I'm reevaluating my my entire existence. So, so yeah, that's May 16th. And, oh, another thing that I wanted to mention, both with this time from April 17th into May, if you look at Pluto, Pluto has moved into the third decan of his cycle in Capricorn, 21 degrees Capricorn. It's going to go back to 19 and 18, but however, it has crossed into the last degrees, the last 10 degrees of a sign. And as we know, Pluto stays in one sign for a while. It's been in Capricorn since 2008. It's not going to move into Aquarius until 2022. However, there's a shift there. It's not as significant as when Pluto actually moves into a new sign, but the fact that it has crossed over into the third decan, we are going even deeper into the destruction of some structures. Absolutely. Again, individually, collectively, that's where even bigger, deeper changes are going to occur within our structural arenas. So wanted to point that out as well. And Black Moon Lilith connected to Pluto, that can go either way. And that's immense amount of power, just immense amount of power, especially in Capricorn, power to create what we want and to move forward with our goals individually and collectively. However, we know that power can be used in either way. So all I can say for right now, I'm not going to predict the future or anything whatsoever. But what I'm going to say right now is I'm very curious to see how this configuration is going to play out. Because looking at Pluto and Black Moon Lilith, we definitely dealing with some unseen forces and some shadows and darkness and underneath the surface kind of energies. But at the same time, great power if we so choose to express it in a more innovated way. So moving into June 9th, Mars. So Mars is going to conjunct the south node of the moon 3 times. So this is still before Mars goes retrograde. It's approaching that date. But I wanted to show this because it's very interesting to me that there will be 3 meetings, Mars and the south node of the moon. South node of the moon is the things that we are releasing, that we are leaving behind, so to speak. It's lessons that we are learning, and it's important for us to integrate those lessons into what it is that we're moving towards and into the future. However, not to get stuck in those lessons. The south node of the moon can be very appealing sometimes, and it's very comfortable to stay here. However, their invitation is always to move towards the north node of the moon. And I'm not going to get into Aquarius and Leo right now because that's not what this presentation is about. I want to focus on Mars meeting the south node of the moon 3 times. So on one level, when we look at masculine as a whole, okay, and how we have defined the masculine, that is something very important. The definition that we have put on what masculine means, and the definition that we put on what feminine means, that is very much up for letting go. And with Aquarius, again, it's the renewal of some of the definitions that we have put onto the masculine energy. And when we look at masculine as a gender thing, as a man, being a man, what does it mean to be a man? And so many men walk around very confused and very out of touch with so many things, because as a society and as a world, we have defined what it means to be a man and what the masculine energy means even. We have defined it in a way that definitely keep a lot of people limited. And it's time to break free from that. Mars conjuncting the South Node 3 times within a few months. Like, we've got to break free for some of those definitions, for some of those boxes, releasing the way we used to do things also. Very, very much so. A time to not repeat the same actions. Definitely the time to, oh, okay, I can initiate new things in my life. I don't have to do the same thing over and over again just because society says that that's the way to go, or I have an idea that that's the way that things needs to go. And Aquarius can be a fixed sign, even though it's an air sign, but it can be very fixed. It is a fixed sign, and it's also very intellectual. So connected to the South Node is an invitation also to maybe not be so intellectual and not just base all of our actions on our intellect, but perhaps there's an invitation for more of a heart. North Node in Leo. At the same time, Venus is in Cancer, so of course the emphasis is on our feelings and our emotions and our feminine nature, and to find the balance there. But this will be the first meeting of Mars and the South Node, 7 degrees of Aquarius, and moving into June 19th. I just wanted to show here, as opposed to that's 10 days before that Mars joined the South Node, and it's still close right here for sure. Venus is joining with the North Node. So to me, it's a sign of, well, you know, some of the masculine ways that we've been trained and taught to initiate and act, actually, we might benefit more from moving into the future with consideration to the feminine energy, to our inner child, and embracing that aspect of ourselves that is so creative and can be very innocent, and to let the feminine lead the way after so many years of the feminine being fully and completely suppressed by the patriarchy. And that's a big part of this entire cycle of Venus and Mars in 2018. I see it as a grand initiation and a breakthrough, because also Aquarius and Uranus moving into Taurus, it's a breakthrough. We are looking at a breakthrough, new breakthroughs that we are going to experience, again, personally and collectively, breakthroughs in the feminine rising above. Not to squish the masculine. It's not about, oh, women are better than men. That's what we want to relinquish, actually. The whole gender game, so to speak. But just to find the balance, and in order to find the balance, we do need to let the feminine rise a little bit more after so many years of suppression. And this is such just a phenomenal example of that. And especially this whole time that Pluto is conjuncting Black Moon Lilith, it's definitely the divine feminine and all the aspects of the feminine that is not just, again, how we've been trained maybe or taught, oh, the feminine is just sweet, you know, Venus is just sweet and quiet and all that. It's like, no, the feminine, it has a lot of layers to it and many expressions to what we see, what we perceive to be a feminine energy. Black Moon Lilith is definitely, I relate her to Kali, which is the destructive force of the feminine that has the ability to just destroy what needs to be destroyed, but it still comes from a place of love and compassion. This needs to end in order for the new to rise up. So within all this happening, all this time, so Mars is opposing Venus. So we're going to experience that quite radically, perhaps, the opposition between the sexes, the opposition between men and women, feminine and masculine, on an individual level that could be expressed perhaps in within ourselves, of where the feminine pulls into one direction and the masculine pulls into one direction, our need or desire to take action, but the action is pointing into a different direction than what we feel may be comfortable with, or just opposing forces in that way, internally and externally. Again, very curious to see how this is going to play out on the global stage. We're already experiencing so many stirrings within that, and in sexuality also, and women starting to speak up. So as this is happening, there is a loose square to Jupiter in Scorpio. Okay, 13 degrees Scorpio, Venus squaring that, and Mars squaring that, and the nodes square that point as well. So there's definitely, with Jupiter being in Scorpio, which interestingly enough is the ruler of Mars, sexuality is on the table here. How we do sexuality, how do we relate to sexuality, what is the new paradigm in sexuality. 2018 is paving a massive way for radical changes and breaking free from some distorted structures and ideas around sexuality, both for men and women. So that's kind of like a side note here. From June 19th, we're moving into June 26th, and that's when Mars is going retrograde. That's the day that he's going retrograde. And he's going retrograde, just like I showed in the other chart. It is opposing Venus. Not exact, 9 and 15, but close enough to pay attention to. And same thing with Jupiter. It's only 4 degrees square here. Since Jupiter is also the biggest planet in our solar system, 4 degrees, I consider that as a square. And yes, exact is always a stronger energy, but nevertheless, not something to ignore, and especially on the day that it goes retrograde, with Jupiter being in Mars's ruler, Scorpio. So 2018, like I said, our sexual desires, our sexual nature, how to work with our sexuality, and what we call our Kundalini energy, because Scorpio, Mars, that's going to come up with Jupiter being in Scorpio the entire year, our Kundalini energy and our life force, and how to work with our sexual energy in a way that actually gives us life and is used in the way that it was designed and meant to be used, both by men, or utilized, not even used, by both men and women. So yeah, that's the day Mars goes retrograde. And then we move into July 20th, which is the second exact meeting, I'm looking at exact degrees of Mars and South Node. So that's July 20th. Mars is still in retrograde. And all this time, and I constantly, as I was pulling out these charts, looking at, okay, Aquarius, we want to look at Uranus, and Uranus is in the sign of Taurus. So there is an indirect connection throughout this entire journey between Mars and Venus. Not a direct connection, but an indirect connection. And it's something to pay attention to. I feel there's an indirect conversation, perhaps, maybe behind the scene kind of a thing between Mars and Venus. And when Uranus involved, kind of like Uranus is the the mediator between the two in a way, since Uranus moved from the sign of Mars, Aries, to the sign of Venus, is connecting the two energies for a renewal. Like I said, a breaking free, a new way of doing things, masculine, feminine, working together. So that's July 20th, the second meeting of Mars in the South Node. And we move into August 27th, and that's when Mars goes direct. And what's really, it's a beautiful day. August 27th of 2018, it's a beautiful day. Mars goes direct, which also I just want to say here, when Mars is in retrograde, we can feel like our ability to take action and initiate is not as strong. It's just that kind of an energy that is like, oh, you know what? Maybe it's time to slow down. And Mars doesn't like that. Mars likes to just run and do, but that's why it goes retrograde every couple of years, that we can slow down, look at our desires and our instinctual nature and some of our impulses, and what can be slowed down, what can be harnessed in a new way. Every 2 years, that's good. So we don't let our egos and our desires just run too crazy. And on that day that Mars goes direct, which can bring about this, a new energy, taking action and initiating things. On that day, Venus is in her home sign in Libra. Very beautiful, very loving, harmonious, looking for that balance. This is a great time for relationships, in my humble opinion. And at the same time, we're looking at a very close conjunction between the moon and Neptune in the sign of Pisces. Unconditional love, compassion. Mars doesn't know a lot about compassion as the warrior. However, and I did a presentation about Mars, how the higher expression of Mars can be the protector, not necessarily the warrior, but the protector that, yes, sometimes needs to go to war, perhaps. However, it can be used as the guardian and as the protector. And that's what the masculine energy can be so utilized for, as the foundation of that protection and guidance and guardians energy. So I see this as a really beautiful time for also forgiveness. This will be a time in relationships for bringing more harmony and forgiveness, if necessary, cultivating more compassion. And then with Mars going direct, it's a time to take some action. Maybe it will be a time to, oh, you know what, let me initiate a forgiveness with this person, or a very loving and healing conversation. And as we know, Chiron here is already in the sign of Aries. There will be a shift of energy and in our healing abilities and capacities, and how we exchange it with other people. Because with Mars and Venus going retrograde in the same year, there was such an emphasis on relationships and how we interact with one another, especially with Jupiter being in Scorpio that entire year. So that's August 27th. And then the last chart here that I have for Mars is September 25th. And that will be the third meeting of Mars with the South Node, with Mars direct. So Mars is going to meet the South Node twice being direct, one time before it goes retrograde, then in his retrograde cycle, and then when it's out of retrograde, meeting the South Node for the third time, the September 25th. And very interesting this is all happening in conjunction to Black Moon Lilith again. And this time, Venus is in Scorpio, which again is the ruler of Mars. So we're seeing this an indirect connection, and also it's 5 degrees apart, pretty close. There's a square, there's a challenge, a bit of a conflict perhaps Venus and Mars. Looking in our desires and our wants, and where do we put our boundaries, and then how to balance that with our social network and our global network and society and our future, and how do we move forward towards our future in accordance with some of our instincts and our intuition and what we really feel deep inside that we want to initiate and to do, and we just can't do things do the same thing over and over again. That will be the last meeting of the south node of the moon with Mars, and then Black Moon Lilith in the picture in Aquarius. It's what needs to be what needs to be removed. Again, it's Kali. It's the Kali energy. What wild energy perhaps needs to be freed up within ourselves. So that's the charts that I have for Mars and Mars, his cycles. And moving into Venus, so like we saw, Venus is in retrograde from October 5th until November 16th. I want to mention some interesting facts here. This is January 9th, actually, way before Venus goes retrograde, way before. But I wanted to show the conjunction, and this is the exterior conjunction of Venus and Mars, and that just means that Venus is going to be on the other side of the sun. This is not a visible conjunction. And that's occurring January 9th. And I mean, isn't this a power group right here? Pluto conjuncting the sun and Venus, all in 19 degrees of Capricorn. Definitely, if you have anything in your chart, 19 degrees, Capricorn, or cardinal signs, pay attention to that day, January 9th. It's not that far, actually, a little bit over a month away. So that will be to begin the year with the Sun-Venus conjunction in Capricorn. There will be a lot of emphasis on Capricorn in the years to come, 2018, 2019, which again is what are our goals personally, as a society, as a global network. Which mountains are we climbing? What do we really want? Where do we put our awareness and our consciousness? And yes, structures that will need to collapse, that will need to come down in order for those new goals to be achieved. Okay, so I wanted to bring that up. And on that same day, if you look over here, what's going on, Scorpio party a little bit. We've got conjunction of Mars and Jupiter in Scorpio, which Mars is very strong in Scorpio. Again, sexual energy, the Kundalini energy, acting from a place of instinct, but that is not impulsive. That is not just, oh, I want, and I'm just going to go for it, no matter what the consequences are. That can be a Martian energy. But to trust our instincts from a place of, that's my intuition, gut feeling, what we call gut feelings, being connected to that deep part of ourselves that really knows the way, that knows where to go, that knows what needs to be initiated, and knows what it wants. So that's coming up January 9th. 2018. And then moving into March 4th. Now, this is very interesting. On March 4th, again, way before Venus goes retrograde or anything, but on that day, Venus is going to be rising as the evening star. And that she's going to start her ascending process until October 20th. So we're looking at about 6 months where Venus will be rising and ascending from the underworld. Now, okay, I'll get to it in just a little bit, because Venus went into the underworld in November 16th, 2017. And I'm going to mention that date in just a moment, but just remember that date. March 4th, though, she's ascending from the underworld. We're going to start seeing her as the evening star. And on that day, and check this Pisces party out. We haven't had Pisces in a long time. and we're having a triple conjunction here, 27 degrees of Pisces. Chiron is back into Pisces because there's still more of spiritual healing that needs to be done and opening that channel. And Venus is joining that with Mercury, which is the messenger of the gods. And there's definitely a divine message here of what I see with Venus and Chiron in the picture in Pisces: divine love, unconditional love, compassion, and forgiveness. If you are familiar with any forgiveness practices like Ho'oponopono, which is a Hawaiian forgiveness technique or practice, this is the time, you guys or ladies. This is the time for that. And this, we don't see this very often. And at the same time, I mean, oh my God, the Sun and Neptune are conjuncting in Pisces. Can make this up, right? This is absolutely incredible. And what a time for beauty. And like I said, cultivating our ability to be forgiven, to forgive ourselves and each other, and compassion. This is compassion. Without getting religious or anything like that, this is Christ consciousness for me. What I see in this Christ consciousness to me just represents our ability to be in forgiveness and compassion no matter what. And that's an interesting thing, no matter what. And Mars is in Sagittarius. This time, it's what? Sagittarius, new horizon in our future, and optimistic and faith. And okay, this is the territory that we want to head towards. What is the territory? Okay, let's look at all this. And it's time to forgive and to let go and let things just dissolve so we can move forward, free from any grudges, free from anything that holds us in contraction or in hatred or anger and whatnot. So that's March 4th. Start looking for Venus in the evening sky. And then on October 5th, this is when Venus goes retrograde. So when I asked you to remember November 16th, check this out. This is fascinating. Venus is going retrograde at 10 degrees of Scorpio, which is the exact degree that she went into the underworld on November 16th of 2017. Now, when is Venus coming out of retrograde in 2018? November 16th. Very interesting. We can really dive deep into that. But just to save some time, I'm just going to put it out there. And we can all maybe just contemplate that for ourselves, and all the numbers and the connection of all those details coming together. Again, nothing is a coincidence in the universe, in the life that we are experiencing. So October 5th is when she goes retrograde, 10 degrees of Scorpio. And Mars is still in shadow here, which is very interesting to me. Mars goes out of shadow October 9th. So when Venus goes retrograde, 3 days before Mars exits his shadow period. So, and then Chiron is, like we saw on the other chart too, is back into Pisces. So there is that element of compassion, and Venus is helping us to connect with that more. The spiritual healing that can come from that. And moving into October 26th is when Venus is going to conjunct the Sun again. But this time it's an interior conjunction where Venus is on the other side, not on the other side of the Sun, but between the Sun and the Earth. And if you look at this over here, the nodes are at 0 degree, about to switch signs right here. So again, we're looking at the planet of love joining the Sun. That's our consciousness, that's our awareness, that's our purpose, reminding us of love and feminine and the divine feminine. And again, in Scorpio, it's the strong feminine, it's the Kundalini energy. Uranus is still in Taurus right here, and nodes are about to shift. And this is the nodes are shifting on November 10th. So this is only a couple of weeks before the nodes are shifting into new signs. Yeah, the interesting part here is the conjunction of the Sun and Venus opposing Uranus. Uranus is opposing all that in the sign of Venus. So there will be perhaps some tension, but a great invitation for that awakening. And this could very well be a configuration for a very strong, massive Kundalini awakening, individually, collectively. Ascending, but ascending through the body, not, oh, we don't need the body, we're just going to meditate and ascend and just go. No. This is body. This is physical. We can ascend using our physical senses, using the physical vehicles that we have received from the divine. They're not less divine than anything else. Mars and Venus definitely help us to see that. And that's a big part of 2018 and the cycles that I'm talking about here. And then November 1st, I just wanted to show this chart because on November 1st, Venus will appear again as a morning star. And it's very sweet that as she transitions to go to be a morning star, she's back in her home sign. She's still in retrograde, back into Libra. So much beauty and balance and harmony. The reminder of that as we're switching. Venus is switching from evening star to morning star. There's a shift because, again, this is all throughout the retrograde cycle as we are introspecting more and looking within for that sense of balance and justice and harmony. And again, relationships are definitely going to be emphasized and looked at, especially with Venus in Libra. And then November 16th is when she goes direct. Interesting that Uranus actually dips back into Aries, back into the sign that rules Mars, actually. There's some territory to cover that, more to reinvent, more to break free from. And check this out. Mars is in 0-degree Pisces. So again, we're having all this Piscean energy, bringing the energy of forgiveness again, and spirituality and connection to spirit. And the moon is in conjunction with Neptune, again in Pisces, while the nodes are already in a new sign, in the new signs. So we're looking at the entire year. We started in January, now we're here into November, completing the year, and boom, this is a shift of our destiny after we've covered so much in Aquarius-Leo axis, and now we're moving into a new stage, a new chapter in our own evolution, which is, this is one of my favorite images of all times, for all of us to take in and to receive as the new paradigm, is what it is that we are creating within ourselves when it comes to masculine, feminine, and then between men and women, as I spoke about earlier. And when those two forces are joined together in divine harmony, which what I see in this picture so much, and divine love that is very freed from any destructive attachments or patterns, has the potential to create the most beautiful ripples in the world and to bring about profound changes. It's from within, and it's within our relationships and the way we relate to one another. And we can find that divinity that is so available to us when we choose forgiveness, when we choose compassion, when we choose to embrace one another with our hearts, not intellectually. This is what's possible, and I feel that this image really represents that. And that's my take on the whole thing. And if you'd like to know more about me, noalakshmi.com, astrology readings, and a lot more.
Okay, Noa, thank you. That was amazing. Thank you so much. Could you please click on stop share at the top of the screen?
Absolutely.
Great. And
okay,
great. Do you have time for a few questions?
I do have time if we are good on time, because I know I did exactly an hour. So
yes.
Yeah, I definitely here for questions.
Okay, go for it. Anyone with a question? Okay, well, I noticed that Venus will be square the nodes. I didn't make note of the dates. Sometime next year.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember the degrees. I can't remember. But anyway, what is your take on that? It'll be temporary steps.
Well, I can't remember the date, but yeah, Venus is going to be in Scorpio, so she will be squaring the nodes. To me, it's anything that squares the nodes in that way is to pay close attention to. And Venus in Scorpio is our instincts, again, our deep desires and our feminine energy as it expresses itself as the Kundalini energy, as the life force that is our creative force, really. So we can definitely utilize that Kundalini energy, that feminine power, to create. And so in order for us to move into the North Node in Leo, which is our self-expression and which is more joy, and the inner child and childlike, play-like expression, we've got to pay attention to that Venus and Scorpio energy within us. Again, it's our impulses, it's our Kundalini energy that is our creative energy, not to be suppressed, not to be transcended as and discarded as something that is irrelevant, but something to pay attention and to utilize, again, in a constructive way. And our sexuality, Venus in Scorpio is our sexual energy. And squaring the nodes is in order to move forward, in order to move into our creativity and into our heart space. Really, we've got to master our lower chakras, first, second chakra, in our sexuality. And in order to master it, we actually need to ask some questions. Well, what is it really? And what is my relationship to my own sexual energy? And how do I express that with others? Those are big questions that we'll be asked to ask ourselves and within relationships as well.
Thank you, Noah. That was a great answer.
Thanks for the question.
Describes it so well. Thank you. So one final question, anyone? Okay, looks like that's the end of your meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Linda. Thank you so much for everyone.
We'll see you next time. Thanks again. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, Noah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brilliant.